This is Mari and Jerome from the Bonsai Supply, and today we have a very special episode to share with you. We got to drink coffee with this very special artist.
Yes, she is a world-renowned bonsai artist who has studied in Germany with Walter Paul, and she has done bonsai demonstrations really around the world. She is none other than Jennifer Price. Let's go and meet her.
Hello, my name is Jennifer, and I'm very excited to be here.
So Jen, since this is coffee with Mari and Jerome, we have to know how you drink your coffee.
I used to do goat milk, but actually now I've switched to oat milk, which I really like. It seems to be the new fad. I feel like everybody's into oat milk now, and I've jumped on the bandwagon.
So where do you get goat and oat milk from?
the grocery store.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He doesn't do groceries to begin with. I love what you're saying. I've never seen that.
The last time I went to the grocery store, I've only seen almond milk and regular milk.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I could have said I have a couple goats and I go out and every morning, and then the oats became more challenging, you know, with me having to, you know, harvest the oats. Yeah. And but the reality is,
I don't know if you went to like a farmer's market or there was like a special store, or where you said it's grocery store. So okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think oat milk has become the celebrity drink of choice too. Like Oprah Winfrey now has stock in oat milk, and it's the big thing, Jerome. So you gotta try it.
I also drink my coffee with oat milk now. So I'm gonna.
You do? Are you being serious or funny? You're being funny. Well, next time I see you, you're gonna thank me for the oat milk tip.
Okay.
The next question is going to be, of course, we want to know, how did you get started in bonsai? Like, what was the experience that you had that made you think, I love this. I want to do this.
So I came at bonsai from a little bit of a different approach. As you may know, I mean, I was a classically trained ballerina for many years, and you know, the difficulty there is the injuries at such a young age, and you don't realize that, you know, when you're 18, 19, but at, you know, 25, and actually my career ended at 26, you know, I was having a really tough time because I couldn't, you know, with all the injuries, I couldn't dance professionally anymore. And I had gone to a local garden center, and I'd always loved growing things and could pretty much grow anything, house plants, you know, you name it. And bonsai really struck me. The first time I saw it, I was amazed at the line and the form and, you know, the base and how the trunk lines moved and the branching structure. It reminded me of dance and how, you know, so like, you know, a cascade would come down and a literati would be somebody reaching up, and I fell in love with it. And that's sort of how I started, just, you know, finding it, being struck by the line, the movement, the form, and then the journey got started.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
That's really unique, and I see what you see. Like with the dancing and stuff, that's just beautiful. I love that.
You know, even when you think of like a group planting, you know, like here at the nursery where I am today, you know, there's a really cool euonymus, which is a native tree here in Pennsylvania. There's a really neat grouping of euonymus, like a clump style, and it kind of reminds me of, you know, multiple people that would be dancing and how everybody's kind of moving a different direction and reaching and turning, and it's really neat. So.
You know, I think you just changed how a lot of people are going to look at bonsai after this interview, because that's a really interesting and really cool way to look at bonsai. And you are right; this is kind of like a dance of branches and trunk movement and everything like that. I like that a lot.
So that's kind of like your next way to keep dancing in a way.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because it's put me back on stage again, which has been really fun, and a completely different art form.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you dance, there's what we call a third wall, which is you as a performer never see the audience. You know, you only see the black, you know, the lights and the black, and then you hear the applause. In bonsai, of course, you're speaking and talking and interacting with this audience, which is really fun. That in the beginning, that was a bit terrifying for me because, I all of a sudden all these people were looking back at me and I'm thinking, what, I'm supposed to say something here? When I very first started giving demos or giving talks about bonsai. But that has been really fun to be able to be back on stage again in, an art form that's so completely different and yet for me very tied into dance.
So I'm going to ask you the next question. So I know that you are traveling a lot in bonsai, and I do know that you are an apprentice of Walter Paul in Germany, who is one of my absolute favorite bonsai artists. So I wanted to know how that happened, that you going from Chicago to learn bonsai in Germany.
Yeah. So when I very first started bonsai, I joined the local bonsai club, which is a wonderful resource. I'm still a member. I have some very good friends there. And they mentioned to me that they were going down to Brussels, bonsai in Olive Branch, Mississippi. And I went with them about a week after joining the club. I thought, well, we'll go down. And of course, I did everything wrong. I took like all the advanced classes thinking, well, I'm going to be brilliant at this, which was not at all the case. But I met Jim Doyle. And Jim Doyle was actually a tap dancer when he was young. And so I took his class. We had a lot in common to talk about. He noticed sort of I walk like a duck, from all the years of dance. And he said to me, were you a dancer? And I said, yes. And we began talking and I liked his class so much that I learned about Nature's Way Nursery in Pennsylvania and came up here, and Walter Paul comes here probably at least 2 times a year to teach and give workshops. So it was really through Jim Doyle that I had the opportunity to meet Walter. I had no idea that I would ever make bonsai anything more than, a fun hobby. It was actually Walter Paul that said to me, you will be a bonsai artist.
So, and do you study with him every year? Like, do you go for a certain amount of time to Germany and you stay with him?
Yes. Yes, I do. I'm actually headed back to Germany the 3rd week in August. And then from there, I'll be going to Sweden with Walter and his other apprentice, Thomas. But I try, the goal is to get over there at least twice a year and, study it for, 3 or 4 weeks. And then also when Walter comes here to the United States, he comes in the spring and, in the winter here. So, I've spent a tremendous amount of time with him and also traveling as well. When he has, jobs, I'll go assist him either here in the United States or internationally. COVID, of course, put a little bit of a damper on that, but now I'm able to go to Germany again, so I'm very excited about that.
All right, so it's gonna be maybe a hard question because I know the bonsai trees are like kids for you guys, but I need you to pick your favorite species and why.
And why? My favorite species. For the moment, how about that? Because it is very hard to answer that question, right? I'm having a lot of fun with junipers. And the main reason with that is because in the very beginning, I was terrified of them because they seem like a very different beast than say, how you would work with a pine or conifer or spruce. And so I felt very inadequate at how to work with them. And it was me really overcoming that challenge, of working with people like Mauro Stenberger, now working with Ryan to try to understand technically, certainly horticulturally, how to work with them and how to style them. And I felt like I was very, again, inadequate at styling them at the beginning. They always looked messy. I could never get what my eye wanted to see out of them. So they've become a favorite of mine because I've worked at that, and now I absolutely love junipers.
Do you have a juniper that you own that you love, or a story behind that?
I do. I have a very good Rocky Mountain juniper. And I got it here at Nature's Way Nursery. Mauro Stenberger originally styled it. And I think when I bought it several years ago, it's probably one of the oldest trees I own. It was a little bit above my ability at that point. And so I think, like I know Jim was concerned if I really had the horticultural knowledge and the technical skills at that point to care for it. So like I say, I worked with Mauro in particular on that tree. Since then, I've tried to keep it a little bit in his style, but I've redesigned it a bit. Now I'm working with Ryan on it. So it's become a favorite of mine just because of kind of the journey that I've been through with the tree.
I love that because I love when you take something from like another person and continue it, the journey of it. Like,
Right.
Actually, Jerome has a couple trees from Etrout, and it's just beautiful to know that I have gone through these great hands and like they will continue his legacy, as I call it.
My favorite is when I see Ed every so often, and he looks at the tree and he's like, "Oh my God, the tree has gotten so much bigger or so much more beautiful," and you're like, "Really?" And you're like, "Oh, this is right,"
That's wonderful. It's a challenge because you don't want to. In bonsai, there can be so much of, okay, so and so styled this tree. Now I, as the artist, I'm going to completely redo it so it's my tree and it's going to be better. And that's hard because you always want to do justice to the tree. And it's wonderful to hear that, Ed sees it and you have now taken it to the next level, that he really loves and enjoys. That's great.
I mean, that's what you hope for when the original person sees your tree now.
Yes.
Just being like, "Yikes, what happened here?" You never want to hear that response.
Or you really acknowledge that it came from somebody else and no, as you said, not being like, "Yo, now it's my tree, so I'm just gonna do
right.
whatever I want after." Like, it's nice to know that.
It doesn't really happen that a bonsai tree belongs to just one artist, right?
Right.
Most of the time, trees have gone through multiple artists, multiple hands, and to keep that tradition alive, to keep giving it to the next person, I think is just amazing.
I think it's neat that our hands, have the ability to put an imprint on the tree. But I think, in a tree's life, we're only a short part of how that art form is evolving. And I think we need to remember that as artists.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we are good with the tree, they're going to outlive all of us. So it's definitely.
I hope so.
That's the way it should be.
Exactly.
I'm also going to ask you an extremely difficult question. I was going to ask you, what is your favorite style or technique? And it can be your favorite style at the moment, the same as the technique.
Mm-hmm. My favorite style is probably literati, just because it really does remind me so much of, of dance and of sort of the struggle, that the body goes through. I like the sinuous kind of lines within literati. As far as a technique, I'm working on like notch techniques right now with junipers, how to bring a heavy branch down. As a woman in bonsai, sometimes I find it can be difficult to move a heavy branch with, say, gauge, 4 wire, just in my ability to try, I try to use pliers, but trying to apply that wire for me because I just don't have the hand strength that, say, like you would, Jerome. So I have had to learn other techniques as to how to bring a heavy branch down and be able to manipulate that.
Okay. So would you agree that most people think that literati is a very easy style because there's not much to it? But my opinion is that I think that literati is probably one of the hardest styles to pull off.
Yes.
It's certainly up there, I think. Because if you don't do it right, it just doesn't look right. And it will forever not look right.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of negative space, I think, in literati. It can almost be very austere, where less is more, in other words. And that's a challenge as to how to get something to look old, sparse, without looking contrived. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I find it a very difficult species.
Maybe that's why I like it. I'm just stubborn.
I find it a very difficult technique. Now, do you also like cascading literati or just upright literati?
I think more upright. Yes. I mean, I do like cascades. I think when you first get into bonsai, you really love cascades in general. And then, you sort of merge out of that phase and, get into, more and more and more. Rodney Clemens, when he was here with myself about a month ago, he was telling me about wind influenced. He really likes things when they're wind influenced, when it looks like the wind has sort of. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So now it's made me want to design a couple trees that way. So.
My last question for today, and it's just if you can give us 3 advices or tips for beginners, for people that are thinking on starting in bonsai, what will those 3 little tips will be?
Mm-hmm. When you first start in bonsai, of course, you want to buy everything because you've got the bug, right? I mean, you can't stop. That's a challenge, because then what do you do with all of a sudden the 100 trees that you have now gotten, right? So the one thing I think you have to realize is that as you continue your journey with bonsai, your eye will change. So what you love, and that's the same for, I'm sure, for you both, yourselves, for myself, what we love now, a couple years from now, as we continue to grow as artists, it will not be the same. So I think when you're a beginner, it's wonderful if you have a local bonsai club near you to join that, because it's a great resource. You meet people that can help you with either technical or horticulture. And then you also have a place where you can donate trees to raffles. You can sell trees to other club members. I think those 2 things are very helpful. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't joined my local bonsai club, as I mentioned before. The other thing is find one person, one teacher that you really respect and admire, their style, that you can work with them, their technique, and focus on that. It's wonderful to take every workshop you can, but when you start reading magazines, reading books, reading the internet, looking at YouTubes, going to all these workshops, you're overwhelmed with all the information you get. And, it's a bit of a battle to figure out what's right, what's wrong, where do I fit in all of this. So I think if you have one person that you can say, for instance, Rodney, this is my main teacher, I really work with him. And then you can go take some other workshops, but you're always really going back to that one person so that you're not getting so confused. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And that's a great tip. That's definitely the way to go. It can be very overwhelming. Yeah.
I think especially, like you said, also when you start grow the stuff that grows in your area, right? Which kind of, if you start to look at magazines and you start to watch YouTube videos and books and stuff, and they do stuff in Japan, but you live in Florida, you can apply the same techniques, most likely.
That's an excellent point you just made. And, we had talked about when we had met the other week, it's so important to use our native material because we are so lucky here in America. What I have right now that I'm working here on at Nature's Way Nursery is very different from what you guys have down in Georgia versus when I was just down in Florida. But I think we need to really embrace our native material. And as you said, Jerome, it's very difficult when you first start because you see all these beautiful pictures from Japan and you want to grow all of this stuff, but you can't grow everything. You can't be a specialist in everything, right? So
I do not know.
That's so many species, and that's the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for being with us today and having this little chat. It was so fun to get to know a little more about you and your journey. And thank you again for this wonderful time. And we hope to see you soon in person.
I would very much like that. I had a wonderful time as well. Thank you both for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.